I'm going to spill the tea on podcast guesting. Today we're talking about the finances behind being a podcast guest. Hey, I'm Coach Molle, and I'm a visibility hacker. I help small businesses build their visibility online, connect with their new customers, build their influence, authority, make more money online, all that fun stuff. But honestly, I have spoken on more than 500 stages, either virtually or in person. I have been on more podcasts than I can actually count. I do lose track. I have to look back in my files to figure out how many I've been on. And so I'm going to share with you some of the behind the scenes information on being a guest on a podcast, from payment to more. We're spilling it all today. So if you have a podcast, you're probably like, oh, I need guests, because that's how we get our message out to more people. We can get more experts on to share more value with our people. But the reality is, oh poop, do I need to pay these people? So today we're gonna bust those myths. We're gonna clear all of that up and much, much more. Do they pay me? First, we're going to start with the strategy that I use to secure world-level, A-level guests. Then we'll talk about what you can do to become an influential host. And we'll follow it up with 3 tips to wow your audience and wow your guests. Roll the intro! When you're looking for guests for your podcast, you have to kind of divide the world into different stratums. First, we'll talk about the ones at the very, very top, our headliners, our A-level guests. For a lot of those people, maybe they're on a press tour, they just launched a book, they have a new product coming out, they're looking for that exposure. So you can get lots of great A-level guests by looking at what they are launching. So I honestly went through Amazon and figured out who was releasing books in the next couple months, and then we were able to secure a lot of those authors on some of the shows we do in the visibility hacking world. And it's because they had a message and it was the right time to get it out to the audience. Perfect. But keep in mind, if you're a new show, you're not necessarily going to have that same kind of clout behind you. So some of these top level celebrities, if you will, won't want to sit down with you. A great example is the business writer Seth Godin. I actually have one of his books over here. This one. He is known actually for being quite generous with his time, getting onto other people's shows, especially people who are growing their marketing platforms. But he has a caveat, or at least I've heard he has a caveat, that he won't say yes to being on anyone's show unless they've already produced 100 episodes. And this isn't because he's looking down his nose at anyone. It's instead because he wants you to be consistent. He wants to make sure that if you see him as the dream guest for your show, then he wants you to work towards that. He'll happily share his time with you, but he wants to make sure that you are putting in that consistency first. Okay, honestly, between us, who would be the #1 guest that you would want to have on your show? Let me know down in the comments below. If you want to become an influential host, someone who people want to be on your show, they want to be guests on your show, well, there are a few things that you have to do. You have to stand out from the crowd. And in my opinion, this is what over-delivering is. So as a host, how do you actually over-deliver? First things first. You show up early. Don't say that your interview is at 6 o'clock and you show up at 6 o'clock, or God forbid you show up at 6:01. Instead, show up a little bit early, make sure that you have everything set up, everything's ready, and that you're in the right state of mind for when your guest arrives. With that, make sure that you're also testing your equipment. You want to make sure your audio sounds great, your camera's all set up, whatever you're recording on sounds good, or if you're interviewing in person, make sure that's all set up before your guest arrives. You don't want to waste any of your guest's time. Something that I used to never want to do, and then wondered why I was not getting as much traction as I wanted to, was that you have to follow up with your guests afterwards. Don't just conclude the interview, say thanks, see you never. You want to keep that conversation going. You also want to connect your audience to your new guest. So keeping that conversation going will lead to more exposure, more great topical content, and your guest is much more likely to want to share your promo episodes, for example. And then talking talking about that relationship, one thing that I love to do is really hype up my guests to my audience. Do a ton of preview posts, do a ton of social posts that lead up to and after the episode, and I like to, in my Facebook group, do a special introductory post to introduce the expert to those who are in our Facebook community, because why not? And by the way, if you haven't already joined us in our community, head over to visibilityhacking.com or check us out on Facebook, Visibility Hacking, and you can join our fantastic group, and maybe I will introduce you to our beautiful audience as well. Now, 3 tips to really wow your guest. But before we get into that, I'll answer the actual question. No, your guests should not be paying you, and you definitely should not be paying your guests. Let's just make that clear. You get a lot of publicity, a lot of exposure from being on people's shows, but a red flag. Multiple red flags are out there if you are being asked to pay to be on someone's show. That doesn't vibe with me. That sounds a little bit sketchy, and honestly, it might not be the right market fit for your product and for what they're able to get on the other side. If they are trying to quote unquote run their business, and that's how they make their money, then I would suggest, and it's an actual good audience, then I would suggest proposing a joint venture where you can pitch during that presentation, and then you can split any of the possible proceeds. That way, the person who needs to run their business and make some money with their platform, they can get that done as well. So it feeds both of those goals. So let's get into 3 different ways that you can wow your guests and become quite an influential host. First is to be flexible with your scheduling. I use Calendly. You can use whatever kind of calendar scheduling app that you like out there, but I highly recommend using one. This way you can give your schedule out to your potential guests. They can pick a recording time that works for them, and it's great. You're not going back and forth, oh, is Sunday at 2, is Monday at 7, blah, blah, blah. It's really easy. And then if they need to, or if you need to change that recording time, you can also do that easily. And all of the emails and calendar automations are all set up and ready to go. So make sure you're flexible with your scheduling, and your guests will love you for it. Second thing that allows your guests to really be wowed is to allow and invite opt-ins. So you don't want people to be pitching on your show necessarily, but you do want, if your guest offers a fantastic world of information, say they're a Facebook ad specialist and you definitely aren't, but people in your community might need the expertise this person is sharing. So then allow for an opportunity within your podcast interview for your guests to tell them how people can get into their world, where they can go to get this new guide or this new freebie and opt in to that expert's world and that expert's mailing list. It leads to a deeper community. It feels like you have to let go of some of the control you have on your people, but I promise you that you and your people will be better off when you do that. And then finally, the way that you really wow a guest, the way that you separate yourself as an interviewing expert compared to everyone else out there who's just an amateur interviewer, is to really learn how to hype up and highlight your guest. Really make them shine, because honestly, you're the one who frames that influence and frames their authority when their guest comes onto your stage. So even though it might be only the maybe 5th episode you have ever recorded in podcasting history, and it might be their 10 millionth, you can still help level up their authority because they're on your show. So highlight them, celebrate them, and let your people know why this person is an expert that they need to listen to. You're gonna want to do it. So again, I want to know in the comments, who is your dream guest? Who is the best interviewer you've ever seen? Let me know down in the comments below. And of course, I'm going to personally invite you guys over to our Facebook group, Become a Visibility Hacker. Go to visibilityhacking.com, click the link that says Become a Visibility Hacker, and follow all of the directions. In the group, you'll get access to all of our coaches and so much more. So if you're a small business owner or a visionary entrepreneur and you want to build your authority, your influence, and ultimately your income online, then you will definitely want to join us in the group. So I'll see you over there. Until I see you again, my friends, remember, I love you. be excellent to each other, and go find your people, because they're out there waiting for you.